Alrighty, Year 9, welcome back to Lesson 10 this week. In this lesson here, it's Thursday, week 9, we're going to go over a bit of an assignment checklist before you guys go ahead and submit your model task. Now, before we begin, we just want to make sure that we're reminding everyone of when our submission dates are. So today we've got 9 SCI2 and SCI4, so that's Mrs. Ireland and Miss Bathgate's science classes. And then tomorrow we've got Mr. Peel, Miss Williams, Mr. Bazet, Mr. Monching, and then Mr. Ryan and myself's classes. So that's 9 SCI 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7. So making sure that you're paying attention to that because you don't want to be submitting your assignment late. So during this lesson, you guys are going to be able to identify all of the areas of the Year 9 model assessment task and discuss some of the submission criteria for this assessment task. And to succeed in this lesson, you guys need to have checked over your assignment to ensure that you've included all relevant criteria points and making sure that you're submitting your assignment on time. So what we're going to do this lesson is we're going to break it down into each of the sections. We're going to go through what are the requirements for each of those sections to make sure that you're hitting the mark, especially when it comes to the online submission, because we're not actually going to be handing this in person due to the lockdown. So the first section of this assignment is all about creating a model. So what you need to do first, if you haven't already, which most of you should have done, is go ahead and choose your type of model. So you can choose to either do a plate boundary, so like a transform boundary, a convergent or a divergent plate boundary, or you can go ahead and make a volcano model. And that has to be one of the 4 model types that we mentioned on the worksheets. That's the cinder cone, the stratovolcano, the dome, or the 4th type of volcano, which has just slipped my mind, but it's all on that worksheet. All right, now, what do you need to include in your model? So this is the second section. What do you need to include? So you've got to make sure that you're including all the important features of your model. So say, for example, if you're doing a volcano, you would need to include areas such as like the magma chamber, the lava that's coming out of the volcano, the dome itself, the magma chambers, any of the vents that might be relevant. You've also got to make sure that you're including all the features that are both above and below ground. So we're not just talking about the top half of the volcano, we're talking about what's underneath the volcano as well, or same with the plate boundaries. Now you need to make sure that you're labeling all of the important features. So anything that you deem important, make sure you put a label on it so that the people marking it, your teachers, can look at it and go, okay, well, we can see that John Smith has had a look at this and has actually identified the areas that they've included in their model. You've also got to make sure that your model is size appropriate. So making sure that it's not like super tiny, like say a matchbox size, but making sure it's not too big, like the size of your house, making it about the same size as a shoebox or maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, depending on the resources you have access to. But make sure that it's size appropriate because when it comes to submitting your information on it, that's where it's going to be important. Now, if we have a look at the screen here, this is the marking criteria for the actual creation of the model. So this is the skills section. So you can see that you're getting up to 10 marks for the appearance and creativity of your model. So that's how well you've actually made your model. You're getting up to 10 marks for the labeling of the model. So the more labeling and the more accurate labeling you have, the better. And you're also getting marks up to 10 marks for the accuracy of your model. So talking about, or actually showing how accurate your model itself is. Now, the next part of your assignment is talking about the research that you undertake. So the first main part for this is a description of your model part. So you need to describe each part of your model that you have labeled. So making sure, like say, for example, if you've got the vent in a volcano, what is the vent? All right, what does it do? What is its purpose? You need to talk about how those parts form. So for example, the vent again, how did that vent form? Was it always there? How did it get there? Why is it there? And then you need to talk about how these parts relate to the other parts of your model. So, for example, talking about the vent again, your volcano has a vent, but why does it have a vent, all right? How does that relate to, say, the magma chamber? How does that relate to when it erupts, all right? To talk about the relationship between that section and the rest of your model. What you also need to do is talk about the risks that come from your landform. So you need to identify the risks that your chosen landform poses. Now, we discussed these last week in lesson 6 and lesson 7, where we talked about plate boundaries, risks, and minimizations, as well as volcano risks and minimizations. And as I just mentioned before, you need to then identify some technologies and some strategies to reduce or remove those risks. So we can't necessarily get rid of the effects of plate boundaries or volcanoes and volcanic activity, but we can kind of mitigate or remove an element of a risk. So identifying those technologies or strategies that we have in place to remove or reduce that risk. And on the screen in front of us now, we've got the marking criteria for both of those sections. So knowledge in description and paragraphs, so that's talking about your extensive knowledge of the tectonic process, and showing your understanding of the risks of the risks and the technologies to reduce those risks. And the section below is all about the communication. So it's talking about making those paragraphs and making those sentences nice and clear and concise so that anyone who's marking it isn't confused and understands that you're clearly trying to convey a certain message. Now, there is an extension section in this assessment task, so this part isn't compulsory, but we recommend that you do go ahead and have a crack at it. So this is talking about the current scientific theory of plate tectonics. So what you need to do is you need to summarize in about a paragraph the current scientific theory of plate tectonics. Now, we discussed this in video 8, lesson 8, which was on Monday this week. So if you haven't already, go back and have a look at that and it'll help you out a lot. And then what you need to do is you need to take that scientific theory and explain how that theory relates to your landform, all right? So how does that scientific theory relate to a plate boundary? Or how does that scientific theory relate to a volcano, right? So finding those links and writing that down in a paragraph as well. And here's the marking criteria for that. So doing a good summary of the theory and making some links to the forces or energy and formation processes of your chosen landform. Now, how to submit. So obviously, we aren't going to be submitting these face-to-face, which is rather unfortunate, but, you have to roll with the times as they are. So what we're going to get you guys to do, too far ahead. What we're going to get you guys to do is making sure that once you've finished your model, you go ahead and you take either a video explaining your model and showing all sides of the model, or a variety of photos of your model, so making sure that we can see all of the different sides, and you're going to be submitting those photos instead of actually submitting your model in person. Now, what you also need to do is you need to attach an A4 document. Now, it can be between about 3 to 4 pages in length that has all of your information on there. So all of those points that we've just covered in the video, so talking about the description of your model, identifying the labels and what each of those parts are, how those parts relate to one another, going ahead and including all of that information on an A4 document, so like a Google Doc or a Word doc, and you can attach your photos to that as well and your video, or you can just upload them separately. So once you've finished watching this video, you need to go ahead and finish off your assessment task and research model, all right, and making sure you've actually finished your model as well. Make sure you're going ahead and taking lots of photos or a video of your model. Then submit your assignment in your individual Google Classroom. So remembering that Miss Bathgate and Mrs. Island's classes, your assignment is due today. Make sure you check in with them to see what time it is due. And then once you've done all of that, go ahead and have a look at some of the extra YouTube videos that I've attached, because tomorrow's lesson is going to involve a bit of a prac. So making sure that today you're dedicating the rest of this lesson to finishing off your assignment, submitting your assignment, making sure it's nice and polished, and then going ahead and having a watch of those new YouTube videos. So good luck, Year 9. You guys are going to smash it. You guys have done amazing so far with your online learning. Keep up the good work and good luck with your assessment task.